This is Bruce Wall from the City of Scottsdale's Neighborhood College Program. We're all in this together.
The City of Peoria. We're in this together.
The City of Chandler. We're in this together.
Town of Queen Creek. We're in this together.
Hi, this is Jamie from the City of Scottsdale with my daughter Jocelyn. Whether you're working from home or doing kindergarten from home, we want to remind you that we're in this together.
City of Tempe. We are in this together.
Hi everybody, this is Beth Mulcahy and welcome to our Facebook premiere, HOA Academy class number 2. Sometimes when I start the Facebook premiere, it takes a few minutes for people to get on the call. So I want to just start out by saying I hope everybody's having a great week. And we're so happy to see you here today for our second Facebook premiere. And I can see that people are joining us in real time here, where the numbers are starting to go up. So it's so great to see all the people here today wanting to learn more and help their associations. And if you're a homeowner, we welcome you to being here. If you're a board member, I'm glad to see you here trying to make an improvement in your community. If you're a management company or a manager, so happy to have you here as well. And I can see some people are already saying that you're watching, so that's great. Great to see you here, Rick, today. Wonderful to have you joining us here. Okay, I'm going to be getting started now. First, I'd just like to welcome you to our virtual HOA Academy today in partnership with the Neighborhood Services from all around Arizona, specifically Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek. I'd like to just do a shout out to the neighborhood services departments from these many different cities who are coming together today to help us provide free education for board members, managers, and owners who live in associations. I don't know if you know the story about how these classes came about, but many, many years ago, over a decade, probably 15, 20 years ago, our firm started teaching classes at different neighborhood HOA academies around the valley, and they really grew in popularity, and a lot of board members, managers, and owners started to rely on these classes to give them the information that they needed to run their associations and to make their communities better. And so when the COVID-19 pandemic came in, late February, early March, we had a number of HOA Academy classes that were scheduled for this time. And we all put our heads together, and the cities of Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek, all of them got on a Zoom call with me, and we came up with the idea to do programming for virtual classes. And it was really something that we had discussed about a year and a half ago when we had a luncheon and we came together to brainstorm ideas. But the pandemic really made it happen because we knew that this might be the future of our classes, but we didn't know how soon. And so due to the social distancing requirements and the stay home order, it forced us to, do virtual classes. And it's actually been a really great thing. And on that same note, it's forced all of us to change in many different ways. I mean, a lot of associations now are having Zoom meetings where they're conducting their board meetings and their annual meetings via Zoom. And I just ended a firm meeting for my law firm where all of us got together via Zoom to share ideas on how we can improve our firm. And so things are changing, and it's great to see that all of these different cities care about their homeowners, care about the board members and the managers that manage properties in these respective cities, and want to provide free education for them during these difficult times. So again, I just want to commend all these different neighborhood services departments for putting together such a great curriculum for these 2 classes. So first, I'd like to start out by saying thank you for tuning in. I see a lot of different names on the screen here today, and One thing that I love seeing is if you wouldn't mind just letting me know you're here. Because otherwise I'm just talking into my camera phone, and I like a live audience. So please let me know you're here. I see right now we have 32 live people, which is awesome. And also let me know where you're dialing in from. Whether you're in Arizona right now, or maybe you're back in the Midwest, or you're in Canada, and you own a property in an association in Arizona, and you're trying to stay up to date on things, even if you're not in Arizona. And also, if you don't mind, let me know which association you're with. And I can already see several clients of mine. Bob Lehman with Sutton Place. So good to see you here today. I'm sorry we can't talk back and forth, but I'm seeing that you're here, and it's great to have you here. Okay, let's start out with just a few pointers. I have a very relaxed teaching style for those of you who have seen me teach a class in person before. And so I encourage you to ask questions throughout the class today. And the best way to do that is to put your questions in the comment section. And then we will be responding to you via the comment section. At the end, if we have time, I'll also be doing some questions that we may not have been able to respond to in the comment section. So if you want to communicate a question, or if you don't understand something, let me know in the comment section, and then I'll go back over it again, or I'll answer your question as we go through the presentation. So my name is Beth Mulcahy, and I am the managing partner and senior attorney for the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. And I have enjoyed representing associations for the past 23 years. And our firm currently represents over 1,000 community associations throughout the state of Arizona. Like I said earlier, I've been teaching classes on a volunteer basis for neighborhood services departments and neighborhood services around the valley for many years, probably over 20 years now. And I really enjoy teaching these classes because it connects me with homeowners and board members and managers, so that I'm aware of the issues that are, most pressing to them, really on a very regular basis. We teach pre-pandemic, we were teaching, over 60, 65 classes every year as a volunteer to help the neighborhood services departments provide free education to board members. And so we've continued doing that even during the pandemic with our Facebook Lives. And, this Facebook Live is specifically aimed towards neighborhood services in Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek. And so today we've got a really exciting class. And I really look forward to sharing knowledge with you on preparing a budget and also how we can handle those delinquent owners during the pandemic. Before we get started, people always like to know a little bit about me. For those of you I don't know, I'm a native of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I moved to Arizona in 1995. And I started my law firm in 1996. And since 1996, really, I've spent my entire career, representing associations. And it's been wonderful. It hasn't even been a job for me. I love coming to work every day. I love helping associations solve their legal problems. And it's actually just been a lot of fun. I don't even see it as a job. And I've certainly enjoyed working with many board members and managers and owners to solve problems in their associations over the past 23 years. In addition to my role as legal counsel for associations, my firm, it's myself and I have a team of 10 others. And I also serve on my board of directors where I live. And that has been a challenging and rewarding experience. And I've served on my board for many different years, and I've tackled a bunch of problems as a board member as well. So I think I provide a unique perspective to teaching these classes. And one more thing I want to mention is that I also had a little stint as a disgruntled owner where I was really unhappy with how things were going with my association. So if you're one of those people here today that's a board member, an owner who's unhappy with how things are going in your association, or a manager, I want to just let you know from the outset that I really do understand, because not only have I, spent over 2 decades representing associations as their lawyer, I also have had a little stint as a disgruntled owner for about 2 years, and I've had a stint for many years, over 10 years, as a board member for my association. So I get it. and I'm here to help you, with the problems that you're facing as board members. So our goal today is to answer your questions regarding your HOA and your condo as you prepare your budget and as you deal with the changing circumstances of the pandemic. One of the results we think of the pandemic is going to be that you may be having some shortfalls in your income, meaning that you may not have enough money to pay your bills in 2020. We want to help you plan for 2021 so that you set up a really solid budget that will, address any potential COVID-19 issues that may be a result, of the pandemic. And then I want to give you the tips that our firm has for collecting delinquent assessments against owners. I love the practice area of collecting delinquent assessments, and we're good at it. We do a lot of due diligence, and I'm going to tell you the tips that we have to help your association if you have any owners who aren't paying their assessments. And through these classes, really our goal today is to make it easy for you to still have access to community association information just from the comfort of your home during the pandemic. And we don't know what the fall is going to look like for our neighborhood services classes. I think the neighborhood services are going to be looking at this issue, in the next few months, but we want to assure you that we're going to be here for you to provide free education, whether it's eye to eye in person or whether it's via these virtual seminars. So don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're here to help you, and we're going to still be providing education to you no matter what. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to do a quick reminder that if you have any questions during the presentation, just go ahead and post them under the comments section, and we'll be answering them throughout the presentation and then in writing in the comments section. And then also I'll be saving some time at the end to do some quick questions at the end. So I want you to feel like all of your questions have been answered during this presentation. If for some reason I, don't answer your question, keep in mind that you can call our free Friday, our first Friday free call-in. And the next one will be in July, right before the July 4th holiday, which is my favorite holiday of the year. And you can call our office that first Friday in July between the hours of 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. And we'll be sure to answer any questions for free that you may have at that time. And it's one question per association. So we look forward to hearing from you if you take advantage of that in July. Okay, let's start out with, how do we deal with things right now? It's 2020. We're nearing the end of the second quarter of the year. And, the COVID-19 pandemic is having an impact on our world, on our country, on the state of Arizona. And it's also trickling down to, Arizona planned communities and condos. And the extent of the impact of the pandemic is really going to vary from community to community. I have some larger master plan communities that have, because of the volume that they deal with in terms of the number of owners, they are seeing an impact, a more serious impact. Some smaller associations, are seeing a minor impact right now, but they're worrying about the future. And some associations it really hasn't affected them at all. And so what we're doing to keep a pulse on things is that we're regularly talking to clients who are calling our office, letting us know how things are going at their association. We're reaching out to management companies to, hear what their experience has been on collecting assessments from owners. And we're also really staying up to date on national trends, state trends regarding foreclosures, bankruptcies, just so that we can provide you with the most cutting edge information about where we see this impacting the association during the second half of 2020 and also in 2021, so that we can help you prepare and make good decisions so that you can, handle issues that come up in your association quickly and without, a severe financial impact on your association. So let's start with what's my advice for the rest of 2020. So as your association, is looking at the financials for the past 3 months, some things that you should be thinking about are, as you're looking at your financial statement and your budget, your year-to-date budget, you should be looking every month at, overages on your budget. Like has the budget, where are you overspending? And where are items on the budget that are under budget? Are your owners paying assessments or not paying assessments? And are the owners that aren't paying assessments, have they always been habitual non-payers? Or is this something new where this person is always paid and wow, over the last 2 months, they aren't paying anything? And so for every association, really the president and the treasurer, I think, are probably the two key people that need to be looking very closely at your financials. And on the overages, are there an explanation on your budget? Like, for example, if on your budget, you have an indicator that, you're over budget on, maybe employee expenses. It might be because you've been investing in a lot of PPE equipment, right? And personal protective equipment. And that was an unanticipated expense that we had when we created our 2020 budget. Or maybe you've had to have additional cleaning companies come into your common areas to clean now that you're reopening the common areas as the governor has lifted our restrictions. And that was something that we didn't normally have once a day cleaning or 5 times a day cleaning or whatever. Maybe you've had to have additional security, and just, taking note of that on the budget and saying, okay, this is something that we're over budget on, and thinking about how you're going to make up that expense. Because let's face it, in 2020, when you created your budget, you had a certain amount of income that was coming in, in the form of a payment of assessments from owners. And you have expenses that you anticipated. If you have unanticipated expenses that, are really going to take a dent out of things, you need to find a way to cut other expenses. If you have a number of owners that aren't paying assessments, that could add another complication to this, because the income that you thought was coming in isn't coming in. So now you got the double whammy of, less money in income than you thought you were going to have in the form of payment of assessments. And you're spending more to clean personal protective equipment, adding security personnel. And so you might be looking at a shortfall of $50,000, $25,000, $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 for your association. And so you really need to reach out to your trusted advisors now if you're an association in that position. And we need to come up with a plan. And so I suggest that you talk to your management company, your association's attorney, and start thinking about how you can make up for those shortfalls, or what the plan is to address the shortfalls. So some ways that you might be able to make up for the shortfalls would be, you may borrow from your reserve account. Well, I do not ever normally recommend that. Sometimes, extreme circumstances require, extreme actions. And so if we're going to do that, we need to have a plan. We need to talk about it with our accountant. We need to figure out how we're going to pay it back eventually. And we want to make sure that we're doing that in an open meeting so that the owners in the association are aware of what we're doing. You may need to get a loan for your association, to cover any shortfalls. You may not be able to do that project that you wanted to do this year. Like maybe you had it in your budget that you were going to resurface the tennis courts or repave your streets or replaster a pool. That may not be possible because of the shortfalls. And also there's going to have to be some analysis on the owners that aren't paying assessments. And we're going to talk about that more in the second half of our presentation. So I'll save that for then. But the bottom line is, for the rest of 2020, we need to be looking at the financials carefully every month. We need to be looking at what the shortfalls are, in terms of the loss of income. We need to look at where we're over budget on our year-to-date budget, where we're under budget, and we need to come up with a formula to survive 2020. And the best way to do that, again, is reach out to your trusted advisors. Let us give you advice. We're here to help you. And I've been through this. I've been through a number of different cycles in Arizona where the economy has tanked, since I've been practicing since 1996 in this area. And we are survivors. We will help you get through this. So reach out to us and we can give you some good suggestions on what you can be doing at your association to survive these difficult times. Okay, so we talked about 2020. We've got our action plan. We're going to be looking at our financials every month. Now let's switch gears and talk about how do we plan for 2021. This has been an unusual year, right? And so now we need to start planning for 2021. And, what we recommend is that, we start planning that 2021 budget now. And I'd like to just start out by reminding you that we have a cheat sheet on creating a budget for your association. And that cheat sheet is going to be posted on the messages section of the Facebook Live if it hasn't already been posted. And we encourage you to look at that. That's a deep dive on this subject. And you're welcome to, refer to that. And hopefully it will answer any questions that I may not have answered here today because it has a lot of additional information. But let's start out first with, okay, how do we prepare a budget? And what is a budget? A community budget is, an association budget is an itemized statement or summary based upon anticipated income for your association and expenses for each fiscal year. Now, a lot of you here today already have done budgets for many years for your association, but we might have some newbies here today that have never seen a budget before. And if that's the case, or if you want to see a sample budget, I'm going to give you an offer to contact our office, and I'll provide you with a sample budget that you can take a look at so that you have an idea as a starting point. Okay, this is what a budget looks like. And the best way to get a copy of the sample budget is to email me directly at bmulcahy@mulcahylawfirm.com. And we'll get that out to you this week so you can take a look at it. Okay, so most community association documents, so typically it's in your CC&Rs, require that the board of directors adopt a budget for each fiscal year. Some association documents require the owners to adopt it, but that's pretty rare. And most of the association documents just allow the board to adopt it. And each association, you're really going to need to check your own individual association documents to determine what are the requirements for preparing your budget. Sometimes associations have, like some strange provisions that are unique to your association. So I want to just make sure you check that box by looking at your budget language in your CC&Rs. Typically it's near or in the assessment section. And you want to definitely look at that as the first starting point for preparing your budget to make sure that you're, doing it in a way that's consistent with your documents. Okay, so who prepares the budget? That's the first question. So if you have a management company, typically the management company will do that for you. They'll take the first stab at it. Some associations, even with a management company, the treasurer wants to have a more active role and they take the first stab of it. For, self-managed associations, typically it's the treasurer or the president or somebody with financial background who helps with the budget each year. It really just depends. Some other associations, some large master plan communities they have a committee that actually does this. So it really just depends for your association who prepares the budget. I will say this, I was former treasurer of my association. It's a big job preparing the budget, no question about it. You spend hours before it goes to the board in a draft form, just thinking about things and analyzing them. And we're going to go through the different, the process to, take the first stab at the budget each year. But it's not something that you just crank out in 30 minutes. Okay. Usually it's going to be 2 to 10 hours of work evaluating and thinking about the budget. And obviously if your association is enormous and you have, like a $5 or $10 million budget, it may even take longer. It may take a week to prepare. So it really just depends. It may be less if you're a smaller association. So let's start out by saying that typically most associations are starting the budget process now for 2021. And so in June and July are going to be the planning months for the budget. And I know that sounds early, right? It's 6 months before the actual 2021 fiscal year starts, but it's necessary because there's, some different procedures that you're going to have to follow, and you're going to have to get board approval. And sometimes you've got draft 1, draft 2. And so you must start now. June and July is the time to start preparing the 2021 budget. Just a quick note to remember is that the association's fiscal year is typically the calendar year. And so that budget should be ready for approval by the October or November regular board meeting for the board to vote on approving it. And so, by the fiscal year ends typically for most associations on December 31st, and you will need to have your budget approved, to be safe, I would say in October or November. Some associations wait, until December. That's cutting it a little close, but you're still before December 31st. So do your best to have it to your board members for their vote, by October or November. Now, if you're one of those associations that has to have owners approve your budget, you got to get going right now because that's an extra step if you have that. And I encourage you to look at our cheat sheet because our cheat sheet has the information on, typically it's condominiums, and we have a detailed deep dive if you're a condominium and it says in your documents that you need to get owner approval of your budget each year. It's going to be an extra step, and you need to be getting that out to your owners, in August, September, or October. Okay, so what do we do? How do we start the budget process? Like how do we do this? A to Z. What do we need to do? Okay, it's a big job, but it's not that difficult. Okay, so I want to start out by saying that. I mean, I when I was the treasurer of my association, I always honestly disliked doing the budget. Because it always seemed like such a big job. But really, when you get down to it, it's just a bunch of little steps and they all come together. So you just have to get started on it. You may be dreading it, but it's one of those jobs that you just got to get started on it, right? It's like cleaning your closets. You got to just do it, it's a big job, but you got to just dig in and do it. It's just like this. So what's the procedure that associations follow when they're preparing their budget for 2021? And how can we factor in the pandemic and how it's going to impact our association in 2021. We've got some really good tips on this. And I'm kind of loosely following our cheat sheet on this. So if those of you want to look at our budgeting cheat sheet, and it's posted under the messages section on this Facebook Live, you're welcome to follow along that way, or you can just listen and look at it later too. Okay, so what's the first step when I'm preparing a budget? If you're a board member or manager or committee, the first thing is look at last year's budget and the records and compare the differences between what did we budget in 2020 and what was actually spent. And so really what you're looking for are over budget items and under budget items. And what you may want to do is highlight the ones that are over or under budget, over a certain percentage, maybe the 5% or 3% or whatever you determine as your percentage. And then think about, why were we over budget? Is there an explanation, right? And then think about, is this something that's going to continue on into 2021? And if it is, you're going to want to, reallocate the expense on that budget item, right? And we've got income on the top of the budget and then expenses on the bottom. So if you're looking at your income and you're looking at, over the past few months in 2020, let's say that 5 or 10% of your owners are not paying assessments, that may be a trend that will continue into 2021. And we're going to talk about, how we might want to add that into the budget in 2021 in just a minute. We talk about, later on, there's a special line item in the budget that I'm going to tell you about to help you on that. So, if you're seeing that the income's down, make a note. That should definitely be something that you highlight and say, okay, is this something that's going to happen in 2021? And our feeling is probably yes. It just is going to depend. Every association, it's impacting differently. We're hearing some associations, no change in the income, no change in owners not paying assessments. Everybody's paying, they're telling me. Other associations, I'm hearing between 5 and 10% aren't paying. And in some associations, not that many, but a few, they're saying, wow, we've got like 30% of our owners not paying. So you look at the trend. Look at what's been happening in your association for March, April, May, June, and then determine if you think that trend is going to continue on in through 2021. And make a note of that, because we're going to be adding that into our budget in a few minutes here. The next thing you want to do is, and also this is where you will, under looking at last year's budget, you're going to be looking at the PPE expenses. additional security expenses, additional cleaning expenses that you may have incurred in 2020, and are those going to be extended into 2021? We think likely they may, so you may need to budget for that. Okay, the next step is evaluate the needs of your community for the next year. Like what did you have planned before this pandemic hit us for 2021? And so think about, are there going to be any new expenditures in 2021 that are going to benefit the community? Were you planning on redoing the landscaping at the front entrance of your association, or changing out the signage, the monument signs as you enter your communities? Were you planning on doing that? And will you still be able to do that? Check your reserve study and see what was allocated to be done in 2021. Are you still going to be able to do that this year? And remember, keep the health and safety of your association in mind. Things that are health and safety issues, you shouldn't put on the back burner. Those need to be done in 2021. But things that are more cosmetic may be something that you may have to put on the back burner and do in 2022. And so as part of this, evaluate the needs of the community, we're going to start thinking about, okay, do we need to increase the annual assessment? And that's going to be something that is going to be, those are always difficult discussions with the board, but, start planting the seed on that. Is that something, does it look like our expenses are going to be higher and our income's going to be lower? And does that maybe mean that we're going to have to increase our assessment in 2021? Ask questions of your vendors. Every summer I get a whole series of emails from managers and board members asking me if I'm going to be raising my rates in 2021. So you should be reaching out to all your vendors and ask them, do you anticipate that you're going to be increasing your, the amount that you're charging our association? And also check those contracts, because a lot of contracts already have the step up provisions in there. I know lawyer contracts do not have that in there, but your landscaping contract, your management contract, your trash removal contract, some of those may have automatic 1%, 2%, 3% increases. And so the contract will give you the answer as to whether or not you're going to be spending, more money in 2021 with your vendors. And so that will help you budget for that line item on your budget, to determine if you need to have more allocated on the budget that you're going to be spending. Another thing that you need to do is now you just need to analyze all this information. So, what we typically see when you're preparing a budget for the next fiscal year is you'll have on one side, you're going to have the 2020 numbers, and then right next to it, you're going to have the 2021 numbers. And so you kind of go back and forth, and you just go line by line by line. So you're going to look at, on the income side, you're going to look at the assessments, and you're going to look at, okay, this is our number for 2020, and then the number for 2021, you're going to want to, I'd probably set it at first at what it was for 2020, what the actuals were, and then we're going to need to go back and back that out after we look at the expenses. But I would probably, double the actual, income and expenses, for 2020, at the end of June 2020. So that you have a full picture for the year, and then use it as a starting point for 2021. And so now you're going to need to start making the tough calls. This is where you're going to really have to do the analysis as you're going line by line. Like, do we think we're going to have more security expenses in 2021? And what will that be? And you're going to have to kind of estimate what that number will be as you go down on the budget. And as you're doing this as an association, please remember to keep us as a resource for you and your management company. If you have questions on this, just reach out to us. We're here to help you, and we can give you our input based upon our knowledge of what's going on in the industry and our war stories from the past, that we can help you on this. Okay, the next one is plan for unexpected and miscellaneous expenses. This is going to be kind of controversial, frankly. But we have, I don't know, very many of you have lived through a pandemic. I personally haven't, and so there's going to be unexpected and unanticipated expenses in 2021, just like there were in 2020. And one of those is going to be a contingency. You're going to need to have a line for contingencies on your budget. This is going to include unanticipated expenses. This is going to include potential, lack of income in the form of unpaid assessments. And so I think what a good, barometer would be, look at what your unpaid assessments are, in the first half of 2020. And I would budget, we recommend that you budget in 2021, that amount likely will not be paid in 2021, and put that in as an expense that you are factoring into the budget. So I know that's going to sound horrible, right, to anticipate that people aren't going to pay dues, but what's worse is if you get to November or December as an association and you have no money. That's a way worse problem. And so, I think probably most associations are going to be putting in this unexpected and miscellaneous expense portion of their budget that probably 5 to 10% of your owners will not pay their dues in 2021. And you're going to factor that right in. And so you're going to know that in your budget, that's how much, we're going to have a shortfall, and that'll be factored into your budget. And that will help you so that you don't have a shortfall at the end of 2021. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope that our economy picks right back up and we can go back to where we were back in January and February. But I think we have to be realists here, and realists, plan for the unexpected and unanticipated. And we need to have a contingency plan so that you don't have a shortfall of money. Okay, then at this point now you will have looked at the 2020 budget. You will now have all your numbers in for the 2021 budget, based upon what you think the increases or decreases will be. And again, you're going to be going back and forth, 2020, 2021, and looking to see, what your magic number is going to be for 2021 after looking at the numbers for 2020. Okay. At that point, then you're really ready to take it to the board. And hopefully you're doing the budget in an Excel spreadsheet, so it'll compute for you, the numbers that you'll need. So it'll total everything up, and then, we'll let you know how much money you need to have coming in as income. And then that will also let you determine how much your assessment will be, so that you can then report back to the board. Okay, we're going to not have an increase in assessments next year, or we are going to have an increase and it's this percentage. And for those of you who are contacting me for a sample budget, the one that we prepared has all of it in an Excel spreadsheet with the formulas already in it. But you don't have to do it in an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, you can also just do this in a Word document if that's what you choose to do. It doesn't have to be super high tech. Especially the smaller associations, most of my smaller associations aren't doing it, in a formal Excel spreadsheet. So don't feel bad if you're one of those associations. It works any way you do it. Okay, so now comes the hard part. So the treasurer, president, manager, committee, we've, crunched the numbers. We got the budget done. It's the first draft. We're really excited about it. We spent a lot of time. We analyzed everything. Now we're taking it to the board, and the board should be discussing this at a regular board meeting. And so your board will be, meeting, probably monthly, or most of our boards meet monthly. Some only meet quarterly. And this should not be done in executive session. This should be done during the open session of the board meeting. And as whoever's introducing it should be the person likely that prepared it. And, you want to just briefly go through the budget with them. I wouldn't, bore them to tears with the line by line. I would give them an overview. I would tell them, when I used to present the budget to our board, what I would do is say, we're going to spend maybe 3 to 5 minutes on this. This is the first draft of the budget. This is how I came up with the numbers. This is how much the assessments will be in whatever year it was. This is the percentage of increase, or if there was no increase. Those are the big things that they need to know, because let's face it, not everybody is a financial wonk, and they don't want to, sit through a line by line on this. So just give them a really good summary, and then ask for input. And this is the hardest point, truly. Because people get super negative when you start talking about increases and assessments, and they don't realize, hey, we've been crunching numbers here and going back and forth on this for hours. And this is after cutting all the fat out of the budget, right? But still, there will be some negative feedback. You just have to listen and explain and hope for the best as you're making, the discussion on it. And at this point, some associations, this might be at your August, September, October board meeting. Some associations might be ready to vote on it right then and there. Other associations want to think about it, and the board members want to go home and analyze it, and then you might be discussing it again at the next board meeting. But again, and voting on it at the next board meeting. But again, remember, don't wait until December to do this. You should be working on it in June, July. The board should start discussing it at your August, September, October board meetings, and hopefully voting on it by your October and November board meetings. And so that's kind of just closing out the topic on our 2021 budget. One thing I want to also mention is that you do have to have a reserve budget. And a reserve budget is different than your operating budget. A reserve is for your long-term capital improvements or long-term capital expenditures. And those will typically be outlined in your reserve study for your association if you have one. I hope you do have one because it's a really necessary thing to have. And that'll be a separate budget, and it's typically significantly shorter. Basically, it just says, how much money you're going to have in the reserve budget as income, and typically that's just moved from your reserve account to pay those expenses. And then what big projects you're doing in 2021, if any. And so it's usually like maybe a fourth of a page or a half a page at the most, if you're a medium or smaller sized association. And that should be separate from your operating budget, which we spent the majority of time talking about today. Okay, looks like we have about 20 minutes left, which is just perfect timing for my favorite subject, which is how do we get the money from owners who aren't paying their assessments? So let's switch gears now and talk about collection of unpaid assessments. And we have a cheat sheet on this as well, and we're going to be posting that cheat sheet, if we haven't already, in the comments section of this Facebook Live. And basically, it's our secrets of our firm that we've learned over the past 23 years on how to collect delinquent assessments from owners. And we need this topic really now more than ever, with the unemployment rates in our country being so high. And we are hearing feedback, as I said before, about many owners not paying assessments for the first time ever. They've lived in the association for many years, have always paid, but now, due to financial circumstances, they aren't able to pay. So what's our strategy going to be as an association as we are reacting to the pandemic and we're worrying about our finances at our association? How are we going to make sure that we have enough money to continue to operate our association? And let's face it, that's our job as board members, right? We have to collect the money because that's our only source of revenue for our, or income for our association. So it's our job, and after the pandemic, first started, we got some questions from boards saying, can we just stop collecting assessments, give people a break? Everybody's so worried about the economy and money. And my answer to that was no, you have to collect assessments. That's your job. As a board member, your job is to keep the association running. And so while it's not, a popular response right now, it's the right response. Your job is to continue with the business of running the association. And part of that job is to make sure that owners are paying assessments. So I'd like to just give you what are our tips, as associations are looking at these problems, and owners not paying assessments. What's the best advice we can give you? And, the best advice I can give board members and management companies right now to collect delinquent assessments are the following. And the first one is every association should have a collection policy. And that shows what action the board will take if an owner doesn't pay assessments. And owners should be treated uniformly under the policy. And usually a policy goes something like this, on the 16th day after the assessment is due, either the management company or the board sends a letter to the owner, a friendly reminder letter. And then maybe on the 30th day after the assessment is past due, a second, more formal demand letter goes. And then maybe once the assessment is 60 days past due, a lien is recorded on the property. And, as each month goes by, a late fee is charged to the account for non-payment of assessments. You need to be careful on late fees. You want to make sure that you're charging them in accordance with your documents and with state law. If you are a planned community, there is a specific law that says that an association cannot charge more than $15 or 10% of the assessment. If you're a condominium, you have to look at what your documents specifically say on what you can charge for late fees. So having a collection policy, charging late fees, knowing when you're going to turn it over to your attorney to take the next legal step, all of that should be outlined in your collection policy. And make sure that you're posting your collection policy, in your newsletter, on your website, talking about it at board meetings, because the owners that, know what the consequences are if they don't pay their assessments are more likely to pay assessments. And I always give the example that you have, let's say 10 owners, or let's say you have one owner that has 10 bills, right? And they only have enough money to pay 7 out of the 10 bills. We want to get in the pile of the 7 bills that are going to be paid. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you are communicating to your owners that, hey, there are penalties if you don't pay your assessments. We're going to lien you. There's going to be late fees. You're going to have it turned over to the attorney. That's how you move that owner into the thinking that has to be in that 7 pile, the 7 bills that are going to be paid each month. If you're one of those associations who just doesn't do anything, if an owner doesn't pay and you let them not pay for 2 years, and you're not doing anything, guess what? You're always going to be in the pile of bills that doesn't get paid. So just know that, that is a strategy. A strategy is have a collection policy. Make sure you're following it. Make sure you're charging late fees. Make sure you're recording liens, sending letters to the owners, reminding them to pay. Make sure you're turning it over to the attorney at the same time. And that will really help you just having that procedure in place, because owners are going to be more likely to pay. So that's a great first strategy, having the collection policy and charging late fees. The next policy is, we talked about this already a little bit, but make sure you tell your owners about why it's important to pay assessments. We need this money to run our association, and what the consequences are if you don't pay your assessments on time. And that just involves having good communication with your owners, especially now during this pandemic time, about why it's important. And a good way to do that is to put it in your newsletter, put it in your, on your website, talk about it at board meetings, talk about it at the annual meeting, just so everybody's aware of the importance of paying assessments and the consequences if they don't pay assessments. Okay, the next 2 tips I'm going to give you, these are the most important tips, on collecting assessments that we're going to talk about today. The first tip is take timely action on these collection files. The second tip is going to be do your due diligence on the files, okay? And we're going to explain how it's so important to know how to collect on these files, to do a credit evaluation. So the first one is kind of easy. Take timely action. Don't wait forever to pursue these owners, because the higher the debt and the longer you wait, the harder it is to collect assessments from owners. I mean, that is just a reality. And after doing this for over 20 years, I can tell you the associations that wait the longest to collect on debts are less likely to collect on debts, because the amount gets so high, maybe the owner's more likely to file bankruptcy. It just becomes more problematic in trying to collect on that debt. So timely action is the key to successful collection of delinquent assessments. The second tip I want to talk about is something that our firm exclusively does, and it works. It's a great strategy. And what it is we do our due diligence and credit evaluations on every owner that's turned over to our office. And what does this mean? This means that when a board or a management company can't collect the debt from the owner after sending a couple letters, maybe they've even recorded a lien, and then they turn it over to our firm to collect on the unpaid assessment or assessments, the first thing that we do is we come up with a game plan on how we're going to get the money from the owner. And how do we come up with the game plan? We do a full credit evaluation of the owner. And what that entails is we confirm that the owner is still the record owner of the property. We determine if they're employed, where they're employed. We look at their debt to credit ratio. So do they have maxed out credit cards? Do they have other judgments against them by, other businesses? We do a social media check on them if they've, just been on vacation. Well, not in a pandemic, but, before the pandemic, maybe if they were on a trip to Europe or Hawaii or something, we make a note that, hey, they have money for that, but they don't have money for the association. We're looking at the value of their property, how much their property is valued at versus how much they owe on their property, on their deed of trust. And we're determining if they have equity. We have really just a huge checklist that we go through to figure out, how do we get the money from this person? What we're looking for is, are they employed? Do they have equity in their property? Do they have money in their bank account? Do they owe money to a bunch of other people? And then we report back in what we call a credit snapshot to the board right away, right after you turn the file over to us. And we say, okay, here's the quick 411 on this person, on their credit. And here's how we think we can get the money. And we give you the options, and then we tell you how much it's going to cost. And then we let the board make the decision on whether or not to pursue that owner in the recommended manner. Okay, so usually when it's turned over to an attorney, we give you that credit snapshot, and then there's some different remedies that you have to pursue the owners, legal remedies. And the two remedies that we have are to either get a personal judgment against the owner or to foreclose the assessment lien. And I'd just like to spend just a minute or two on each one and just kind of talk to you about what it means. Okay, so after we do that credit snapshot of the owners, we know a lot about them. A lot of this information is out there on the internet, and if you know what you're doing, you can, really find out a lot about a person's credit history and how you can, squeeze the money out of them. Let's be real. And so the first option is to get a personal judgment against the owner. And what that means is we file a lawsuit in either justice court if it's $10,000 or under, or superior court if it's over $10,000. And we serve the owner with the lawsuit, and the ultimate result is we ask the judge to award a judgment against the owner. And that judgment is just a piece of paper, right? It just says Johnny Appleseed owes ABC Association X amount of dollars. And with that piece of paper, we can do a number of different things to collect on the debt. Well, the first thing we do is we send the owner a letter saying, okay, we've got this judgment against you now, and we've recorded it with the recorder's office, so it's now a judgment lien. And, our different steps that we can take are we can garnish their wages, and that means that we can have the judge or the court order that their employer, deduct a certain percentage from their wages each pay period to pay us back the debt. We can garnish their bank account. And how do we know where they bank? A number of different ways. If they've ever made a payment to the association, we can get a copy of the check, and now we know where they bank. Or the third thing that we can do is we can garnish their rent. If they have a tenant living in any property that they own, in Arizona, we can have the court order that the tenant, pay rent to us, the association, instead of paying rent to the owner. And so really, once we get that personal judgment, we have a lot of different options. We can garnish their bank account, garnish their wages, garnish the tenant, if they have a tenant in a property that they own in Arizona. And again, it really goes back to the importance of that credit snapshot, right? We've already done our homework. We already know how we're going to get the money. So as soon as we get that piece of paper, we send the judgment demand letter, and then bam, we're off and running to collect the debt with the way that, we've suggested after reviewing the credit snapshot. The other option is to foreclose the assessment lien. This is a way more serious remedy. This is set up in your association's documents, and it allows you to, we record the lien for the unpaid assessments, late fees, attorney's fees, and collection costs that are unpaid in collecting the assessments. And then we file a lawsuit in Superior Court, and we ask the judge to order that the property be sold at a sheriff's sale. And so this is a serious remedy. If somebody isn't paying their assessments, their property can be sold at a sheriff's sale, and this happens often. Now, the one point of caution I want to tell you is this is not a remedy that we do for everybody. Okay, there's only certain time that our firm recommends doing this, and that's again why it's really important to do this credit snapshot. The only time our firm recommends doing a foreclosure is if the owner has equity in the property. So what does that mean? It means that an owner, let's give an example. Let's say a property in an association is worth $300,000, and the owner has a $100,000 deed of trust on the property. that means that they have $200,000 in equity, right? The property's worth $300,000, they only owe $100,000. They've got $200,000 in equity. Okay, that's a property we're going to foreclose on. Why? Because the owner isn't going to want to let that property go. They're going to pay us, okay? And if they don't pay us, an investor is going to come in at the sheriff's sale and they're going to pay us. And so we don't settle a foreclosure lawsuit unless every penny that's paid to the association is paid to the association. And so we only go and file a foreclosure when it's the sure thing, okay? When we know there's equity and either the owner's going to pay it or an investor's going to pay it. And I think that's really a different approach than a lot of other, community association law firms. A lot of times people just say, oh, I just want to foreclose. Well, okay, think it through. Our goal ultimately is not to take away somebody's home. Our goal is to get the money for the assessments, right? To pay back the association in full, including all attorney's fees, late fees, collection costs, in addition to the unpaid assessments. So you want to be really smart and savvy as a board when you're making a decision on whether or not to foreclose on an owner. Okay, and just a parting point on, the different legal remedies and collection of assessments. You want to be really careful as an association if you're hooking up with one of these law firms that offers free legal. I encourage you to look at the fine print. There are some law firms out there right now that are saying, we will do all these collection activities for your association at no charge. But if you really look at the asterisks and the fine print in the fee agreement, what you'll find is that there are a lot of charges, and that if you ever fire them, guess what? All those things you thought were free are no longer free. And we've seen some associations that have come to us recently that have let us know that, we're being charged over $100,000 by our former attorney because we now don't want to work with them anymore. Apparently it's like a life sentence to work with them. And if you decide to ever change, now anything that you thought was free is no longer free if the owner, hasn't paid it in full. So, it's just something to think about. Be careful on that. Read the fine print. Make sure that you are being smart and savvy when you're making a decision on whether you're going to go with one of those free association lawyers. Be careful on that because we're seeing a lot of cases and litigation on that. One thing I want to mention is that right now in our office, we're offering a free credit evaluation on any delinquent owner, that you have in your association. The only restriction is it's one per association. So if you're an association here and you have an owner who is not paying assessments to the association and you don't know what to do, send me an email at bmulcahy@mulcahylawfirm.com, and we'll get you a free credit evaluation giving you our suggestion on, how to handle pursuing this owner to collect the debt and giving you a snapshot of what their credit looks like. And we're happy to do that. Typically, we are getting back to you within a couple days of you submitting that request to us. Okay, so there are a few submitted questions. And I'm just going to start out with one from Kim. Can you present this question, please? What is the best percentage of the annual budget to put towards the reserve fund? So really great question. It says here that you haven't done a reserve study and you're 30 years old. Oh boy, I bet you guys have a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of things that are needing to be repaired right now. So how much should we put in our budget? Well, you need to get a reserve study done right away. And, the cost for a reserve study is somewhere between, $500, $600, $700, and it could be as high as $3,000, depending on how large your association. But the reserve study, which is done by a reserve company, they will give you the number to put in your budget for 2021. And if you want some recommendations on some reserve companies to contact, you can email me at bmulcahy@mulcahylawfirm.com. And I'll be happy to provide you the name of several references for reserve companies. But I can't give you a percentage because, it's a formula that they do based upon the useful life of the different amenities they have in your association. Okay, so Janet, great to see you. One of my clients, Janet, is here. How often do you advise having a new reserve study done? We recommend it anywhere between every 5 and 10 years. I think, the interim updates, you can check with the management or you can check with the reserve company. They can give you some advice on this, but, you're probably not adding a bunch of amenities. I know in particular your association, so probably you can do the interim update every 5 years and then a full-blown new reserve every 10 would be what I would say. But check with your reserve company and see what they say too. Okay, Sean O'Hara, I like that nice Irish name. In preparation for creating a budget, if a vendor contract has already expired, is it best to request an updated contract or just continue without a contract? Is that considered an implied contract, and is that a responsible choice? So really good. We see this a lot with management company contracts, and boards worry like, hey, if we ask the management company, we don't have a contract right now, can we get one? They're always worried that the management company is going to do an increase, right? That's always a worry of everybody. I think I would err on the side of caution there. And if you don't have a contract with the company, I would definitely, ask for a new one. Make sure you're having your legal counsel review the contract so that you're not getting, roped into some 5, 10, 15-year deal. Really, any contract that you're doing for an association should have a 30-day out clause. So the responsible choice, in my opinion, would be to ask for a new contract. I think associations have a lot of negotiating power right now in the pandemic. I think a lot of the management companies and other vendors, we're all worried about our businesses. And so I don't think that they're going to be doing, across the board fee increases right now. I think they're just going to be happy to keep you as a client. Okay, Bill, can delinquent accounts be turned into notes receivable? Does this remove the delinquency as a legal matter? Does it affect a HOA's ability to enforce a lien on the property? That's really going to be a question for your CPA for your association. I personally don't recommend you doing that, but see what your CPA says. I don't think that that's going to reduce your ability to enforce a lien on the property just because it's on your books. But again, I don't see that very often and I don't recommend it, but check with your CPA. Okay, Daryl, what do you do when owners are self-employed? Oh, it's much more difficult to collect. I agree, Daryl. Okay, so when you have an owner that's self-employed, you're limited in what you can do to collect the debt. Two things that we see that we use as tools that are really effective are we garnish their bank accounts, their personal bank accounts, whoever they own the property, that's the bank account that we garnish. And in some cases, we just have to foreclose because we don't have that ability to garnish their wages. So, sometimes we do have to be more strict with the self-employed, and foreclosure sometimes is the more likely remedy that we have to pursue. Okay, Bob, one of my favorite clients, great to see you here today. What is the timeline after a lien has been issued and the decision is made to foreclose? How long does the foreclosure process take? Oh, Bob, I'm so glad you asked this question. Thank you for making me better on this presentation today. Okay, so under Arizona law, we cannot foreclose on an assessment until the assessment is delinquent for 1 year or there's $1,200 owed in assessments only. So there is a waiting period before you can foreclose on an assessment lien. So we want to make sure that you are waiting that time period. And of course, an attorney has to file the foreclosure in Arizona. So any attorney that you hire to do this will know that you have to wait for that waiting period. So, after the lien is recorded, there is no specific timeline. And, I don't have your specific facts of your association, right at my fingertips about, how much the owner owes or whatever, but you can't do it until the assessment is either a year unpaid or there's $1,200 in assessments only owed. But typically after you file the lien, we send, a couple of, demand letters, and, we may have to wait a little bit before we can foreclose, but typically it's not a very long waiting period. Joan Grimm, are capital improvements considered projects that are those that are not in existence now? Okay, so good question. So a capital improvement is going to be like something that's a long-term capital improvement project. So it's going to be, capital improvements are going to be things that are not in your operating budget. So like, let's say that your association is responsible for roofs. That is something that would be a capital improvement project. Or let's say that you are, have to resurface your tennis courts, or, you're redoing your clubhouse, or You're going to change the landscaping at the front entrance of your community. It's not something that's a regular operating expense that we see every month. It's like a one-time expense that's typically for improvement to the community. Okay, so it's 12:04 and I am a stickler for time, and it looks like we have answered a lot of questions already. But any questions that we haven't answered on this Facebook Live today, what I'm going to do is we're going to respond in the comments section today before the close of business, and we'll give you a full response. If anybody has questions that you think of after this presentation today, please know that you can call our office for the first Friday free call-in. Again, it'll be the first Friday in July. Please make sure you call our office between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. and we'll be sure to answer one question per association regarding any question that you may have on the topics we discussed today or any other community association topic. And so it looks like we really had a great crowd today. At one point we had up to 52 people watching live. What we learned from our last Facebook Live premiere was that we had a lot of people watch it on their own time over the weekend or later in the day, and we've had over 370 views of that. So we hope that will happen here too. And we'll be posting this video on our website, and we'll also be providing it to the neighborhood services departments, to all the neighborhood services that have been partnering with us for this virtual HOA Academy today. So in closing, just like to thank everybody for being here with us here today. Thank you for making your community better and wanting to learn more about community association law and budgeting and how to get owners to pay their delinquent assessments. We appreciate you being here, and we can't wait until we can see you again in person, eye to eye. But for right now, we're happy to be able to still provide these classes to you in virtual technology. And it's great that it's so hot outside. It's nice that everybody can just be at home in their air conditioning and listen to the classes. So we hope to see you again soon in person, and know that we're here as a resource for you until we can do that again. We're going to be having future Facebook Lives in July and August, and we're going to be announcing those this week. So stay tuned for those. And remember that our website and our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page are all really great resources for board members, owners, and managers if you have questions about the legalities of running your associations, especially during this troubling time with the pandemic. So everybody be safe, stay healthy. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and have a great rest of the month. Take care, everybody. Bye.
This is Bruce Wall from the City of Scottsdale's Neighborhood College Program. We're all in this together.
The City of Peoria. We're in this together.
The City of Chandler, we're in this together.
Town of Queen Creek, we're in this together.
Hi, this is Jamie from the City of Scottsdale with my daughter Jocelyn. Whether you're working from home or doing kindergarten from home, we want to remind you that we're in this together.
City of Tempe. We are in this together.